Hi, Capricorn. Welcome to Pandora Astrology's monthly horoscope for August of 2022. We are the astrologers of Pandora Astrology. I'm Jamie Kale Miller. I'm in Berkeley, California.
I'm Julie Mijas in San Francisco, California.
Well, Capricorn, this month's horoscope is all over the map for you. If this horoscope brings up questions, we have answers and a natal and transit reading. In that reading, we can more thoroughly discuss your finances and your relationships, either of which might be preoccupying you this month. You'll find the link for that in the text that comes with this video. Well, Juno is still traveling along through Pisces, and I mentioned this in more detail last month in the July 2022 horoscope, which you'll find on our YouTube channel, Pandora Astrology. But I want to bottom line it right now because it is ongoing and will be until October. When Juno goes retrograde, and you can tell that she's retrograde because of this little red RX symbol, but when she does, she brings us all into a relationship retrospection period. And the fact that she's in Pisces means that it is a spiritual relationship retrospection period. So we're all asking ourselves, how does this long-term relationship, whether it's a personal one or a professional one, how does it mesh with my spiritual value system? In your case, this lands in your third house, and so many themes of communication may be wrapped up with this. Like, wow, I really feel like this person's soulmate, and this person is my soulmate, but communication is really tough sometimes. And the mind reading isn't happening the way I really want it to. And then, so you might be asking yourself what you can do about that. And this period of reflection is going to bring up a lot of ideas between now and October. And we will say more about this as time goes on between now and then. The other thing that I want to point to just briefly is that Uranus goes retrograde this month. You'll see it happen right about there on the 24th. Is it the 24th? Yes. Uranus goes retrograde. There's the little red RX symbol. And Uranus is always bringing new, innovative, sometimes wacky ideas from outside the box to disrupt our thought frames and to just sort of, shake things up. And Uranus is doing that in your fifth house, which is a house of fun and entertainment, play, and leisure activities like hobbies and so forth. And so as Uranus makes this retrograde pivot, you may get some new, different, innovative ideas about how to have fun and how to relax. And I'm going to bring this Uranus up again when I talk about the full moon that's coming later this month. But before I do that, I just want to say right now that Uranus transits can feel very disruptive, but their purpose is better than that. Their purpose is really to up level, to bring us to into a new paradigm that wasn't possible from the confines of the previous one. So I'll probably bring that thought up again in a minute when I get into the moons. But for now, I want to toss the ball over to Julia, who is going to say something about Mercury, Venus, and Mars.
Well, yes. Hey there, Capricorn. I'll begin with Mercury. Mercury represents your mind in astrology. And wherever we have Mercury is where we expend a lot of mental activity that month. So Mercury starts the month in your 8th house, and it really spent the bulk of last month there. So if you want to hear more about that transit, I totally recommend you check out our last month's video. But the 8th house is a financial house, and Mercury is a planet of thinking, strategizing, organizing. So your mind could be very preoccupied with your finances, and maybe this would be a good time to meet with a financial planner so that you can plan ahead. Now on August 3rd and 4th, depending on where where you are, which time zone you're in, Mercury enters your ninth house. Now, the ninth house is a travel house. It represents faraway places, and Mercury is your mind. So your mind could be really, really thinking of where you want to travel in the world next. Maybe you're lucky enough to even have a trip planned now, and you're just kind of getting all ready for it. Mercury loves to learn, and the ninth house is an educational house. So this could be a time where you want to pick up some new things, whether that's learning a new language, learning some new software, anything that can really help you to sort of expand further. The ninth house also rules religion. So if you go to church, if you go to temple, if you go to an ashram, you could find that you are communicating and connecting to a lot more people in your community from those religious places. Now, Venus, the planet of art, beauty, and relationship, starts the month in your seventh house, and the seventh house represents your romantic relationship. So these two, the house and the planet, really have so much in common. So this is actually a really pleasurable, harmonious, and peaceful time in your relationship. And if you are single, then this can be a great time for going out and meeting somebody new to date as well. Then by August 11th, Venus enters your eighth house. And again, the eighth house is that financial house. It also represents social taboos. It also represents research and investigation. So, this month you might find pleasure in exploring taboos. Maybe you like a lot of murder mysteries this month, stuff that other people might go, ooh, you're a little bit more drawn to. The eighth house can also represent sex, and Venus is a relationship planet. So this can be a time period where you actually are feeling a lot more physically amorous. Venus in the eighth can also mean that you get a little bit of financial luck too this month. Now, this house represents other people's money, so it could be that maybe your partner gets a raise and shares something with you, or maybe a loan comes through too in your favor. Then Mars, the planet of action and activity, starts the month in your fifth house of fun and games. So Mars in the fifth, this can be a nice placement if you do any sports. The fifth house is, since it's the house of games, if you do any kind of physical games, this is definitely a nice time for it. The fifth house can also represent sporting arenas. So if you're more of a participant, you might find yourself going to more games. Now, Mars in the fifth can be a little bit of a tricky time if you have children, because Mars can sometimes bring conflict and frustration wherever he goes, and the fifth house does represent your kids. So they might get on your nerves a little bit more than usual, or you guys might find, or you might find yourselves fighting a little bit more than usual too. Now, on August 20th, Mars goes into your sixth house. This is a work house. It represents your sort of work conditions at your job. And it's also a health house and a house of routines. So Mars in the sixth can be a wonderful time for starting a new physical routine. That would be a great use of this transit, and also being very sort of driven towards doing things for your health. Now, Mars is a planet that can represent certain chronic conditions, especially inflammation, anemia. Blood is ruled by Mars, any kind of any types of aches and pains could also be Mars related. So if you do have chronic conditions, sometimes this does mean that they act up a little bit. And it can be a time where maybe you're running into a little bit more conflict at work too. Maybe you're not getting along well with clients and customers, or coworkers for that matter.
I'll be back to that idea of that Mars in the sixth house in just a minute. But before I do, I want to go to the first of this month's moons, which is happening on August 11th. And this is a full moon in Aquarius right here in your second house, hanging out with Saturn, which has been traveling through your second house for probably a year so far, and generally spends about 2.5 years traveling through any given house. We don't actually know the timing of this without looking at your personal chart specifically, but So Saturn in the second house will make you feel that you must tighten your belt financially and take your finances seriously and make you feel guilty until you organize them and set some good goals for them. This particular moon is going to touch on those themes and bring up some feelings about them, possibly feelings of fear if you feel that your finances are disorganized and you feel like it would be difficult to get them into order. Or perhaps feelings of security if you feel like you have been organizing your finances in a good way. Now, what makes this moon a little bit more complicated is the fact that Saturn squares Uranus, and Uranus, squares the sun and the moon axis. And so the dilemma really is a dilemma of consolidation, which is a very Saturn theme, like doing things the way that they've always been done, ticking the boxes, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, doing things according to protocol, right? That's what Saturn is pulling for. And for doing that in your financial arena. Meanwhile, Uranus is the innovator and change maker. And so Uranus wants to do something new and different. And I mentioned before that Uranus is traveling through your fifth house. And so you may want to be doing something new and different for fun, for relaxation. And that could be either, a disastrous escape from their financial responsibility, like take up gambling as a habit because I'm feeling rebellious today. Or it could be a really great counterbalance to all of the pressure and fear that this Saturn has been bringing. And really, as to how you balance that, well, that's up to you. You've got to get in the driver's seat and figure it out. Then the next thing that happens is that the sun is traveling along through your eighth house, bringing your attention to your investments, both emotional and financial. But on the 23rd, the sun moves on into your ninth house, which is, as Julia mentioned before, a house of travel and growth and expansion. It's the house of the higher mind and higher learning, like university level learning, big ideas and worldview. So when the sun comes into this house, it's really, really good to start putting some life-giving attention into this arena, asking yourself, what is my worldview and how can I grow? And in what ways am I a seeker? And how do I find the really big answers in life? For many people, that might be within the confines of a temple or a church or other house of worship. For other people, it can be found, on an adventure while traveling or in the woods, perhaps. Doesn't matter where your place is. This is definitely a great time for that seeking to go on. And as the sun continues along this house, it is joined by the moon right here in a new moon that happens August 27. And this particular moon we're calling perfectionism with scattered actions, because the sun and moon are together in Virgo, which brings a very perfectionistic quality, loves to handle the details. And this is the paradox for you, Capricorn. Virgo occupies the house of expansion when life is looked at through a Capricorn perspective. And the irony of that is that you feel most expanded when you're working on stuff that's very small. Ticking those boxes, man. There's nothing more expansive than that for a Capricorn, right? So it's no fun when Mars throws in a monkey wrench from his position here in the sixth house, bringing that irritation and frustration and potential conflict in the workplace. And maybe, stressing out your relationships with people that you work with, and possibly if, that happening when you might already be in a kind of a mood for rigor, there could be some pretty critical exchanges. And so I would be cautious about how you conduct yourself in your leadership around work during this particular new moon, August 27th. Well, that's what we have for you today, Capricorn. You can always find your horoscope on our website, pandoraastrology.com, in the horoscope tab. And if these moons draw your curiosity and you want to find out more about them, you can check out the forecast tab, where you will find videos about both moons and other news of the month. And if you are wanting that natal and transit reading that I mentioned, just go check out the readings tab, where you can actually get into the schedule for a reading with me or with Julia. And until next time, we'll see you around the cosmos. Bye.
Bye-bye.